Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Tuesday, our Tech Tuesday. And I'm starting a new series tonight on a thing that Dr. Jim McAfee refers to as vitamin S. And if you've never heard of vitamin S, it's actually sleep. And I was listening to one of his talks recently on sleep, and it suddenly occurred to me that would be a very good thing to go into because a lot of us are extremely sleep deprived these days. And it makes such a big difference to so many different things. Sleep is absolutely vital, and I've been picking up a lot more as I've been going through the research on this. That sleep is vital to so many things: our health, our safety, our weight, just to name a few. So let me share my screen over here and clean up a few things. Here we go. So I've titled this Vitamin S, which is the importance of sleep. And we tend to take sleep for granted because it's one of those things that we've got to do at the end of the day, unfortunately. Some people love sleeping and some people don't. So what is sleep? Sleep is a normal body process that allows your body and brain to rest. At first glance, sleep is deceptively simple. It's just you go to bed, you put your head down, close your eyes, and you go to sleep, in theory. For most people, it's just a matter of getting comfortable, closing your eyes, and drifting into slumber. I'm fortunate I'm one of those people. But despite how simple it seems, sleep is one of the most complex and mysterious body processes known to science. If you're not getting enough sleep or your sleep quality isn't good, you'll probably know it just from how you feel. If you've ever had an extremely short night and an extremely long day, you'll know what I mean by that. We had that just recently. My wife was woken up, and obviously I was woken up at the same time with a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was a call out. And I've experienced these things as well. And what you do is you get up and you go and you do your thing and you come back and you try and lie down again for an hour or half an hour, depending on what time you're getting back. And it's just not the same because your sleep pattern has been interrupted. And growing up, for those who do know a little bit of my history, my parents used to run an ambulance service on a volunteer basis way back in the dark ages. And I got to the stage where, and this was BC before cell phones. So when the phone rang, and it was usually some unearthly hour in the middle of the night, I could sort of half open an ear and an eye and listen and go, my mother saying, how many? Where? Okay, we're on our way. And then I know, right, it's time to go, let's bail out of bed and get moving because we're responding to an accident. And it just became a way of life. But trying to get a good night's sleep is always optimal. So without enough quality sleep, your body and brain can't work as they should. And there's a difference between sleep and quality sleep. So what is this vitamin S? Lack of this replenishing nutrient results in profound changes in mood, motivation, and vitality. It is a major contributor to depression and a sense of futility in life. And in fact, back in the wars, this was one of the torture weapons that were used quite often for prisoners of war, is you keep people awake constantly for 3, 4 days, and it completely changes a person. And I'm talking about as soon as they start to drift off, they get forcibly woken up. And this happens 24/7 for a good few days, and it affects everything. Its effects, however, go far beyond just the mind. Lack of vitamin S or sleep increases the probability that one will become obese and develop diabetes. Now, that's some quite scary stats over there. William C. Dement, who's a doctor, is the world's leading authority on sleep. And one of the crucial understandings he attempts to communicate to lay people is the concept of sleep debt. we know about financial debt, but he talks about sleep debt, similar sort of thing. He writes, generally, people need to sleep 1 hour for every 2 hours awake, which means that most of us need around 8 hours of sleep a night. So why do people sleep? Modern medicine's understanding of sleep is like a partially assembled jigsaw puzzle. Experts can identify some of the pieces and have an idea of what the big picture looks like, but they haven't figured out how everything actually fits together. Your body cycles between being awake and asleep throughout the day, with certain processes only happening when you're asleep. And when you're asleep, your body powers down, and most body systems, including your brain, become less active. And if you've ever shut down your computer, you'll see that when you hit the little switch button, it actually gives you the option of shutting down or sleep. So it puts your computer into sleep. And if only it was that simple for us to be able to push a button and go and pass out and go to sleep, it would be a good thing. But we're a little bit more complex than that. But when you put your computer into sleep, when you wake it up, instantly everything is there again. Whereas if you shut it down, all the RAM and everything is cleared. And we work a little bit on the same system. So if you have a really good sleep, you've cleared out your RAM and your issues, and you reboot yourself in the morning, and you're good. But if you've just sort of powered down and not shut down properly, including your brain, you become, or you develop a problem. Some of the key things that happen while you're asleep include energy conservation and storage. During the day, cells throughout your body use stockpiled resources to keep doing their jobs. As we know, we are made up of trillions of cells. Pardon me. While you're asleep, your body uses less energy. That lets those cells resupply and stock up for the next day. And this is why if you are deathly sick or you've been in an extremely traumatic accident and your body is needing some serious repair, the doctors will put you into a forced sleep. They call it a medically induced coma, which is essentially, it's a forced sleep, which basically shuts down your body to the extent that it's kept awake by machines to allow it to actually regenerate and recover. And that way you become stronger, quicker to recover from your trauma or your illness. Self-repair and recovery happens while we sleep as well. Being less active makes it easier for your body to heal injuries and repair issues that happened while you were awake. And that's also why being sick makes you feel more tired and need more rest, because that's your body sort of tapping you on the shoulder saying, hello, I need to recover, so you need to sleep. This is why I always say, listen to your body. Brain maintenance is another thing. While you're asleep, your brain reorganizes and catalogs memories and learned information. And this is like a librarian sorting and shelving books at the end of the day, for those who still remember libraries. It makes accessing and using things you learn and remember easier and more efficient. And it's a little bit like, again, your computer, where you don't format the hard drive, but you defrag it. I don't know if anybody still defrags their system. The older systems, it was something that had to get done regularly. Nowadays, your system pretty much does that on its own, but you still have that option to defrag your hard drive, which means that it takes all the random thoughts and memories and everything and puts it together in an ordered way. So when you try and access that information, you can access it a lot quicker. And exactly the same with this little supercomputer here in our skull. We are exposed to all sorts of thoughts and smells and sounds and intense things all day, every day. While we're awake, our body is being bombarded with all sorts of funny things, including our brain. And at night, it's got to go, oh, hang on. Now, what was that? And where? Because somebody tells you something here, and then they tell you something there, and then somebody else tells you something different. And now you've got to remember this afterwards. But how do you do that? And this is what happens when you're asleep, where your brain sort of stops spinning rapidly like a hard drive, and it goes, okay, right. And it reorganizes everything and makes it easier to remember things. And this is why when you are stressed, you tend to forget things. If you are relaxed and you calm yourself, breathe yourself, and get yourself into a different zone, you tend to remember things more easily. An important point of understanding regarding sleep debt is that it is not possible to miss sleep one night and make up for the lack of sleep the next night. So you only got 2 hours of sleep last night. You can't have 12 hours of sleep tonight and expect to make up for it. Not going to work. So in Dement's words, the brain keeps an exact accounting of how much sleep it is owed. We discovered that the effect of each successive night of partial sleep loss carried over, and the effect appeared to accumulate in a precisely additive fashion. The larger sleep debt we accumulate, the more it tends to impair our overall functioning. A heavy sleep debt decreases energy and vitality. And I think most people will know that if you've missed a good few nights of sleep, you're not yourself, and you feel a little bit like your cell phone that hasn't been charged for a while and is operating at about 15%. It operates, but it's really not at its absolute peak. And it alters your mood and makes us irritable and surly. Ever heard that saying of, oh, look at them, they've missed their beauty sleep? This is why. The greater the sleep debt we accumulate, the more likely we will be glum and depressed. Sleep debt also taxes the brain. We become less alert. Our ability to understand what is going on around us is impaired. And if anybody has had sleep debt, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. We tend to throw caution to the wind and to make decisions we would never make in a well-rested state. And this happens with anesthetic as well. So with anesthetic, essentially, you are forced into sleep. And this is exactly why they tell you, do not drive for 24 hours after anesthetic, because you will not focus correctly. And I do remember having one person tell me that they knew the story and they knew why, and they'd had a surgery done in Durban, I think it was, and they needed to travel back to the South Coast. And they thought, man, I'm different to everybody else. I'm fine. I'm feeling good. And the next day they realized that they'd driven from Durban to the South Coast, and fortunately they made it home safely, but they had absolutely no recollection of the trip at all. They did not remember the traffic. They did not remember the speed or how they were working or how the vehicle operated. They literally traveled down on autopilot, and it scared the heck out of them. So how much sleep do I need? And each one of us is generally different. And sleep is variable from person to person. I've got one surgeon who proudly claims he sleeps for 4 hours a night. And I know because he's notorious for doing ward rounds at late hours, sometimes 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, because he's so busy looking after patients and sorting things out that he just doesn't sleep. I would not recommend that to anybody, just by the way. The way that people sleep and how much they need can vary quite widely. And he's probably well adapted to that. One of the American presidents at one stage also said all he needed was 4 hours sleep a night. It was how his body had acclimatized. But these are the exceptions more than the rule. The number of hours of sleep that are good for your health can also change during your lifetime. In general, recommended sleep amounts by age are the following. Newborns, so birth to 3 months, sleep between 14 to 17 hours a day. Infants, which is 4 months to 12 months, sleep between 12 and 16 hours, including nap time. Young children of 1 to 5, they need between 10 and 14 hours, including nap time. School-age children, 6 to 12, need 9 to 12 hours. Teenagers of 13 to 18 need 8 to 10 hours. And adults 18 years and older need 7 to 9 hours. So figure out where you are. And this is why we talk about sleeping like a baby, where you wake up every 2 hours crying. But believe it or not, newborns do sleep an incredibly long time. They basically wake up to have their nappies changed and to eat and or bath and then go back to sleep again. So new moms don't always notice this because their sleep patterns are badly interrupted because the 14 to 17 hours that baby's sleeping might not be the same that mom is sleeping. So these sleep amounts apply to most people, but they aren't universal. Some people need more sleep and others less. Variations in how much sleep you need may even be genetic. For example, some people can inherit the trait of being a short sleeper from a parent. Personal circumstances and your health status can also affect how much sleep you need. People who are sick or recovering from an injury or medical procedure may need to sleep more. And I get this from my patients, especially if they've had quite major surgery. They'll tell you, and they're almost surprised that, wow, I can barely keep my eyes open. I just sleep all the time. And I tell them that that is actually the best treatment you can have, because while you're resting, your body is recovering. So the more trauma that your body has been through, the more sleep it's going to crave and look for. Pregnant people often need more sleep during the first trimester too. If you have questions about how much sleep you need, especially if it's different from the amount recommended for your age group, talk to your primary care provider, because if you are sleeping too much, it could be an indication of a problem, a medical problem. If you're sleeping too little, it could also be an indication of a medical problem. So you need somebody who's suitably qualified to be able to check you out and rule out that, this is normal, or no, it's not normal, but why isn't it normal? Well, let's figure out what the problem isn't, so we can figure out what the problem is. And that can help you understand when that difference might mean there's a medical issue that needs exploring further. So another term that we have over here is a thing called arousal. We would sleep all the time if we did not have an arousal mechanism buried within the brain. I think of these people living at the poles of the earth. I think it's the South Pole at the moment. The one particular area, their sun has just set. It will rise again sometime in February. Can you imagine having pitch dark night for 3 to 4 months at a time? This is how these people live. And then they have the reverse, because then they have, when the sun comes up, they have daylight for about the same length of time. And it must mess up their systems big time. I can't even imagine it. Most powerful factors that influence alerting are the clock and the light. Now, back in the dark ages, before clocks were invented, I think it was the chicken in the morning that tended to wake a person up. But generally, it was when the sun went down, you went to sleep, and when the sun came up, you woke up. So in summer, you slept a lot less than you did in winter. The body likes to fall into a rhythm of waking at a particular time. There are usually 2 clock-dependent alerting periods over the course of a day. For most people, these are first thing in the morning and late in the day. The presence of 2 arousal periods explains why it is easy for someone to fall asleep in the middle of the day and yet find it impossible to fall asleep early in the evening. It is a mistake to attempt to sleep when the body is receiving arousal signals. So and this is why children don't always understand it when you say, now go and lie down, you need to go and sleep. But their bodies are saying, but it's time to play now. And they're wide awake, they're wanting to mess around. And yet you as parents are saying, no, you have to go and sleep. Their poor little bodies get very, very confused. Whereas if they've been running around and they've blown off all their energy, they're going to crash very quickly. So as soon as they stop moving, they tend to fall asleep. So we need to work with those signals. And this becomes a major problem when we travel from one time zone to another, as clock-dependent alerting signals do not change rapidly. Ever heard of jet lag? So people who regularly fly from one side of the planet to the next suffer from jet lag, and I do mean suffer. Whereas those who take a little bit more of a sedate way by sailing, meaning you're going from one time zone to another in a lot slower rate, they don't have the same problems because they can adapt more easily. A powerful influence on setting the time of alerting signals is intense light. Edison changed all of that. Remember what I said about the dark ages? We now stay up much later than previous generations because think back to the days when our electrical supply company caused us to turn the lights off. I think people's sleep patterns improved quite dramatically. If you didn't have a generator or you didn't have candles or your batteries were dead, when the power went off and the sun had gone off, you went to bed. And when the power came back on again, you woke up. But that was usually in the morning. And I think that actually made quite a big difference. It has been estimated that average sleep has decreased from 8 to 9 hours in the 1960s to an average of about 6.9 to 7 hours between 2000 and 2002. I don't know what it's like now in 2024. That was a long time ago. And I'm pretty sure you'll see that it has actually decreased significantly more. And I'll date myself a little bit over here, but those of you who are older than me will probably remember this. Back in the early days of TV came on at about 4 in the afternoon. And I think it was about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. That's it. There was no more TV. So you went to bed. Now you can sit and watch a movie until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I know a lot of people who do. And they're getting sleep deprived. And this is where a lot of problems are coming about in today's life. And if you look at all these symptoms that I'm discussing and will be discussing further, and you look around you, it'll start to become a lot clearer as to who is sleep deprived and who isn't. Overall, sleep has decreased by 1.5 to 2 hours over those 40 years. And well, it's now another 20 years, and I'm sure we can add another 1 to 1.5 hours to that reduction. It is not uncommon for people today to sleep only 5 or 6 hours a night. Sleep time is often spent watching TV, videos, or sitting in front of a computer. Dr. Eddie Nombasi used to talk about before they joined the business. He said he'd get home from shift and the TV would watch him sleep and his wife would wake him up so he could go to bed. And I think while it sounds like quite amusing, it is actually quite a serious thing. And I know if I've had a hectic day, I'll be sitting down and I tend to go, oops, and I drop off to sleep because I know then I'm getting sleep deprived. And I know I have to then go to bed earlier. Rest and sleep were undoubtedly much longer prior to the development of the light bulb and the more modern electronic age. Running out of time. In our 24-hour-a-day society, millions work during the night and sleep during the day, which is a schedule that generally results in substantial sleep loss. Why? Because unless you are fortunate to be in a room that has blackout curtains, in other words, that you can make it pitch dark like a photographic dark room, And I don't know if anybody's ever experienced actual pitch dark. It's quite a disconcerting experience where you literally cannot even see your hand in front of your eyes. But if you're in that sort of environment, you will sleep much better than somebody who's sleeping with normal curtains and the sun shining. So your night duty workers, generally, in a lot of cases, don't get sufficient sleep. This decrease in sleep affects health in many ways. The highest death rate for all ages is among those who sleep less than 4 hours a night. That's a very, very scary statistic. The lowest death rate is for those who regularly sleep 8 hours a night. So if you want to live longer, you need to sleep more. I do still have a little bit of time. So the hormonal effects of sleep debt. As I said, sleep debt affects you in a lot of ways. Most significant are alterations in things called leptin and ghrelin with sleep deprivation. Leptin is a hormone released by fat cells that suppresses appetite and tells us we are full and satisfied. After 6 days of only 4 hours of sleep a night, leptin levels dropped, signaling famine, particularly during the nighttime hours, while subjects were well fed. In 2 different studies of sleep deprivation, leptin levels dropped 16 to 18% within only a few days. Ghrelin is a hormone which stimulates the appetite, particularly for high carbohydrate foods, which is why shift workers often thrive on junk food. Sleep deprivation causes significant increases in ghrelin. Ghrelin levels rose between 15 and 28% in different sleep deprivation studies. These alterations in the appetite-regulating hormones suggests that lack of adequate sleep can increase the probability that we will gain weight and become obese. So if people tell you that they are overweight and they've been dieting but they can't understand it, ask them what their sleep patterns are like. Might be something worth looking at. Then the next thing is your blood sugar effects of sleep debt. A study of the effect of limiting the sleep of young men to 4 hours a night for 6 nights was studied to see how this would influence their blood sugar levels. The subjects were then allowed to recover from their sleep debt and re-examined. And the lack of sleep created insulin resistance, which we now know as diabetes. Blood sugar levels of the sleep-deprived young men were higher after breakfast, despite the fact that their insulin levels are normal or elevated. Peak glucose levels after meals were 15 milligrams per deciliter higher when sleep-deprived. The ability to clear glucose from the bloodstream slowed by 40% among the sleep-deprived volunteers, and insulin response to glucose fell by 30%. This is very scary stats for diabetics especially. The researchers concluded that the sleep deprivation altered the blood sugar coping mechanisms of the body sufficiently that these young men had an insulin response similar to that of pre-diabetic older adults with impaired glucose tolerance. Fortunately, all measures were restored to normal after repaying the sleep debt by sleeping 12 hours a night. I'm going to stop there because we've got about 5 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions or comments before I stop the recording?